Bismillah wa billah walhamdulillah. My name is Ali Abbas. In this short presentation, I would like to focus on a theme which is with reference to understanding the Holy Quran. The Quran is recited on a daily basis by Muslims in their daily prayers, but its importance is more significant as the month of Ramadan approaches. The month of Ramadan is the month when the Quran was revealed. It is recited not only on a personal level, but also on a communal level in the community. My reason to bring about this text is to impart some method to how we should engage the Quran, not just on a personal communal level, but also on a level where we can have an understanding of this holy book. So when we approach the Quran on a very basic level, how do we do that? And if you look at the Quran as a text that has its own history, has its own sciences, and is divided into multiple themes like the divinity of God, the sending of the prophets, the rules and regulations related to prayer, fasting, and the pilgrimage. There are many titles that explore the Quran on a theme-based level where they bring about all those Quranic verses that relate to a particular theme, a particular prophet, a particular institution, say like marriage. So there are many texts that can help us understand by bringing together all those themes into a single book. Scholarship on the Quran helps us unlock the mysteries within the divine text. So how do you approach the Quran? What are some of the etiquettes related to outward behavior and inward behavior that can help us approach the Quran with a state of mind that accepts its divinity? The history of the Quranic text is a work by Mustafa Azami. What is so important about this work is while exploring the history, the preservation of the Quranic text, it also explores in somewhat detail the history of the compilation of the books of the Torah and the Bible. So it is a comparative approach. There are works that help us understand aspects of its historicity, the themes, the way it was compiled, sciences of the Quran, and also thematic commentary of the Quran. For this presentation, I am focusing on the book The Weight of the Quran by Khurram Murad. The book Weight of the Quran was authored in 1985. That is when the first version came out. In my assessment of the various literature in the English language, this I believe is the one text that considers, that reflects on the inward and the outward behavior that we should instill in ourselves before we approach the Quran. It's important to understand where the author is coming from. So these are the different works in the English language that the author has developed his own understanding. You can see it's a mix of reflections on the Quran, on a righteous heart, on sacrifices in the making of a Muslim, treasuries of the Quran, who is the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. I wanted to capture first and foremost the beginnings and his reflections on the Quran, and rightly so for many Muslims, our parents and particularly our mothers, whose devotion and supplications and readings of the Quran are inspiring for us, and that's the first gateway through which we are introduced through the Quran, through the lives of our parents. I think in many ways it also a reminder how we can pass on that tradition to our own children. So as we explore the book, I wanted to share the contents of the book itself. The content itself is very revealing. The chapters are meant to inspire a theme in terms of the placement of the Quran in our life, especially the journey of life. He explores basic prerequisites on how to engage in the Quran, the participation of the inner self, the rules on reading, study and understanding, the collective study of the Quran, living the Quran, embodying the teachings of the Quran, what the Prophet ﷺ articulated or read or emphasized in his different readings and recitations of the Quran. There is a suggested syllabus for study and aids to study. In this particular presentation, I'm just going to focus on chapter 5 because it gives us a certain way, a certain methodology, a certain hermeneutics to approach this text, whether you are literate or not literate with the Arabic language. It's important that I highlight his approach to this. So how do we go about studying, engaging, and understanding the Quran? Chapter 5, I believe, is the most important, single most important text. No matter what background you come from, you will always be thinking out, how do I approach and study the Quran? So there are several themes within chapter 5 that he addresses. Uh, Personal study, categories of understanding, basic requirements. Some of the basic requirements he asks of us is to understand the Arabic language. Now, for those of you who don't understand the Arabic language, one of the things that he emphasizes in the text is understanding certain words that are part and parcel of our Islamic vocabulary. For instance, the word Allah. The word Allah in English is God, but the implications of the word Allah in the Arabic language is different. For instance, the fasting in the month of Ramadan. Now, again, fasting comes from the word Siyam, and the month of Ramadan is where we fast. So how do you sort of take to account these words that have an understanding unique to the Arabic language? Another word that we use a lot is piety, which is called taqwa. How do you explore that word within the Quran? So don't be discouraged if you don't know how to read the Quran in Arabic, but do take encouragement that in an effort to build your vocabulary of the Arabic language, see how the Quran engages that word. Arabs speak Arabic, but the Quran has its own language which imparts an understanding that is imbued within the Quranic text. Some of the more general principles, which is so critical in understanding the text, I think this is the most important chapter in this book, understanding the Quran as a part of a whole. So if you're reciting a particular verse, say on marriage, that is a part of the whole message that marriage is embedded in different verses in the Quran. Understand it as a coherent, unified text. That if you're researching the subject of marriage and the subject that emanates from marriage as a divorce, you have to look at the holistic treatment of how Islam looks at marriage and how it looks at conflict within a marriage and how Islam and the Quran tends to resolve that conflict. One of the most important categories of the general principles is understanding the Quran by the Quran. This is the first and the most important and the foremost principle in understanding the Quran. If you pick up any book on the sciences of the Quran, that is the first principle that they highlight. The second principle is understanding the Hadith and the Sirah. The Hadith, of course, being the prophetic example by his words and his deeds. And the Sirah. The Sirah is also important. Why is the Sirah important? There is a science in the study of the Quran called Asbab Nuzul, which is with reference to the reasons for revelation. When you read a Quranic text, there are many texts out there that will help you contextualize the historical placement, whether it is in that Quranic text or works that treat reasons for revelation. The second piece that he mentions is with reference to the methodology and the guidelines. This is also important. Like I said, I honed on studying words, text and their context, historical background, and original meaning. I'm going to pause this. I hope that you take a minute to reflect on how he elicits these avenues to approach, to study, and engage the Quran. This is the last piece that I will reflect in this presentation on this text. I hope that this chapter in particular helps you to articulate your own approach, the approach that you have been taking, maybe adjusting your own approach and how you want to approach the text. More importantly, since the month of Ramadan is coming up, the month of fasting where you will recite and you will finish the Quran, I think knowing this will get you there, will get you in its appreciation of the Holy Quran. I want us to take a step back and also reflect on some of the different themes that are part of our existential experience, whether you're living in a Muslim country or a non-Muslim country. Some of these themes, in particular, that are contextualized in the Western experience, the world of converts, the diaspora's life on university campuses. These are just some of the themes that are specific to our experience in the West, like Islamophobia. Pause it at this moment. Review these if you like a theme that I missed and would like to discuss. In the foregoing presentation, I will share my contact and you can reach me and we can go about exploring it. So what you've seen everything so far. I'm just one person, one individual. We can collaborate, and some of the avenues through which you can collaborate. You can share a book. You can share your experiences with YouTube channels and podcasts, organizations that are supporting mental health, content for children, converts, Muslim families. And I would like to hear from families who are homeschooling, particularly the literature that you're using at home. So how do you reach me? This presentation will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. That's where you're going to view it. I can be reached at email, and I can be also reached at Facebook. Now let's talk about copyright. I prepared this presentation. I'm waiving all claims of copyright. You can use it, distribute it, modify it. You don't need to notify me. For both moral and ethical reasons, these are the credits.